Hello, everyone. I am back to review the fourth studio album by the Norwegian sensation AURORA. This is her fourth studio album, as I said, and I am donning my AURORA shirt today to review, but I also wanted to add the red because the album cover has a lot of red in the background. This is an album that was supposed to come out in 2021. It was delayed a couple months to the beginning of the year, so we're starting out 2022 with my first album review of the year. And we've had a lot of singles coming out in the previous years leading up to it. The first song to be revealed for this project came out in May of 2020, which, is almost 2 years ago now. That's kind of a long time ago if you think back to the beginning of the pandemic. It feels very recent and yet at the same time very far away. And AURORA wanted to release Exist for Love, as I'll talk about my track by track, as it was the only unapologetic love song that she'd ever written. Probably the most saccharine, the most romantic. And so she wanted to sort of open up with the very soft side of her to sort of usher in this new era with this very 1920s kind of sound, 1930s sound with some orchestral jazziness. And I was thrilled by it. I was blown away. You can watch my track review for it back. I had lots of great things to say, and I was very interested to see what direction she was going to take after her last double album project, Infections of a Different Kind and A Different Kind of Human, in 2018 and 2019, respectively. AURORA has been sort of labeled Scandi-Pop. She's from Norway. She makes pop music, though it's a little alternative. It's a little darker, a little edgier. That's something that I think the broader genre label of Scandi-Pop has been trying to wrap its claws around a bunch of artists from that region. And I've seen a lot of people say it's a lazy label. It's not really a great way of describing her music, but I understand for convenience, you can put her in that category. I think what she's doing with this new project, titled The Gods We Can Touch, is something quite interesting with her sound, and it's a very experimental record, which is something I knew we were going to get. I mean, if you look at the difference between Exist for Love and then the second single that came out a year later, Cure for Me, this past summer, which was a radio smash hit in the making. Very, very different style, very different energy and sound. And so we're definitely getting a cornucopia of everything that AURORA is, I think, looking into the windows of sonically. And I was very excited for this album because of that. I think all of her previous works have felt cohesive, but yet had sonic exploration. But I think this album might have some of the most distinct sonic exploration and different avenues that she's traveling on one project than any of her others. Magnus Skálstad was someone she's been working on from the jump, so his sound as a producer is definitely evident here, but she's working with a lot of different other producers as well, including Askiel, one of the more prominent ones. So we're getting different flavors of production coming into AURORA's sound, but still staying true to that Scandinavian noir sound that she is very famous for. And it's not something I want to necessarily see her deviate from entirely, even though this album, like I said, it's just such a well-rounded palette of colors that she is mixing together, with mixtures of acoustic and synthetic instrumentation and songs. The ballads and the pop, the bops are pretty well balanced here. And she gives us 15 songs. There are 2 album covers that I have seen for this. Obviously, the standard edition, which is a little trippy. Someone had a lot of fun in Photoshop. But there's an even trippier cover that I believe is for the Target exclusive edition, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's for a different kind of deluxe edition, which is even more of a sort of blenderized photo of herself. And definitely a trippy psychedelic energy coming right from the jump, but also a regality. The idea of the title, The Gods We Can Touch, comes from this idea of sort of pagan mythology, which is something that AURORA has expressed being very interested in the last couple of years, particularly ancient Greek mythology. She started in 2019 sort of diving into a lot of reading about Greek mythology and all of the different interesting characters that color that entire world. I mean, it made me really interested in it as she was talking about it. It was like, yeah, there is a lot of characters in this ensemble here. All of the different gods for different aspects of reality on Earth, and something that she found kind of interesting and whimsical about it compared to, the more traditional monotheistic religions that are a little bit more common today and in most of recent history. The gods are a little more, personal when they're kind of just an assemblage of personality traits. They're gods of mechanical things. They're gods of processes on earth. We have, the god of agriculture. We have the god of wine. We have the goddess of the moon and of the stars. And then we have the god of, sleep and dreams. And everything is just, there's added relatability to it. And as she puts it, this sort of imperfect perfection that the gods back then sort of had as they intermingled with humans. And obviously, it wasn't so necessarily seeped into the consciousness of, what a lot of religions today have sort of tried to brainwash into believing, which is that we are all born in sin, and God is this figure very far away from us, high up in the heavens, that is very impersonal to us, that we are not anywhere near what God is yet. We're, a thought of God, but we're not exactly there yet. And Aurora is trying to say that maybe that's also true, but maybe we also are gods. Maybe we also exhibit a lot of traits of godlike behavior, and we all are imperfect and perfect in all of these different ways. And so I like that she's playing with this this theme here, and that theme is very much spelled out as actually every single song, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to directly be themed to a specific Greek pagan god or goddess. And so I might miss one or two because I'm not entirely sure from my research if I found every single one. Some of them are a little bit more obvious, like Exist for Love is obviously Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And Persephone is the goddess of the underworld, which is for heathens. Some of them are a little bit more obvious, but others are a little bit more, and one of them is called Artemis. So we definitely have that going for it with the lyrics, and I'm going to try and really dissect these lyrics here as we go through, but I also don't want this review to be eons long, so we'll see how I do here. But there's a lot to dissect. The opening track, Forbidden Fruits of Eden, is far too short. I must admit, my biggest critique, Aurora, is that you're doing the same thing that I've seen a lot of artists do, which is tack on a minute little interlude or prologue, which should really be attached to the following song. It just, for playlists and everything, it's if you're listening to like all of her music in a playlist, it's so short, and then it's going to go to a completely different song, which maybe is okay. But for me personally, I really wish that you either elongate it. You could have easily made this longer. I would love to see her doing some more ambient choral work. That is something I'd really love to see more of Aurora doing. She experiments in parts on this record with that, but that's definitely something I want more of from her. And so I need a little bit more, because a lot like the Chromatica interludes, I'm not really getting the concept from this short little soundbite that you're giving us. I'm not really getting the Forbidden Fruits of Eden here. I'm getting, hints at something as we're building to something, but you're giving it this very, very heavy-weighted title that I think is belying a little bit of substance that's missing. But that's just my 2 cents. It's an intro. What are we going to do? This intro track is apparently, as Aurora states, an allusion to the mother figure of Earth, Gaia, the mother goddess, Gaia. Everything Matters, the first full-length song, features the French indie artist Palm. I never thought I would hear Aurora singing in French, but here we are, and I love it. This is probably one of the most whimsical and featherweight melodies instrumentally. It's a very soft song, a little bit more in vein with what she was doing with Exist for Love. I could see these songs sort of existing in a similar universe as she waxes poetically about what someone else means to her, what the universe means to her. It's a little unclear if she's singing necessarily about a specific lover, or if she's singing about a flower she really loves, or just a feeling of oneness with the universe as it becomes so broad. Here we are, an atom and a star. You're a part of the movement and everything matters, which I think is a very important mantra to remember, in that everything is something and deserves to be here. And I think, and Aurora, not usually a fan of doing features, heard of Palm and wanted to include some Frenchness to the end of the track, so she asked to collaborate with her. Apparently, they were in a castle in Norway for a big chunk of writing this record, and so she wanted to evoke a little bit of the, I guess, French history of the castle. I'm not entirely sure if the castle's in Norway, why there's Frenchness there, but she wanted that little flavor. Palm adds these lyrics about the flowers that they would pick together on the grounds and the little explorations they did. So apparently this song is inspired by the Greek god of Atlas, one that I think we're all a little bit more familiar with. He held up the world. I think if you look at the lyrics of this song, it makes quite more sense. I was getting this sort of celestial vast kind of almighty God kind of idea from this, because it's spanning, she's talking about the universe in a grander sense here, and how a lover might feel like they are lifting up the world of their partner in a reverent way, not necessarily in a burden. I mean, I guess it could feel that way as well, but it usually is sort of like, we're going to be Atlas for one another. We're going to, lift each other up here. So track number 3, Giving Into the Love. I've already also made a review of this one as it came out in October as the 3rd single. We have a wonderful music video with Aurora frolicking amongst all of these Greek statuesque painted figures. It's a very sensual but elegant sort of video with the energy and the imagery that I would expect for the sort of subject matter. And apparently she is referencing Prometheus. She's talking about how Prometheus stole fire from the gods to create humans out of clay. So a bit of the earth and a little bit of the gods, a little bit of a renegade sort of, we weren't supposed to be created with so much of their essence, but we were kind of ideology. I also get, of course, the universal sort of goddess of love energy from Aphrodite, because it's about giving into the love. Which is, a simple platitude, but one that bears belting out over and over again on what is quite an anthemic chorus of a song. This is definitely one of her more triumphant pop songs on the record, and it took a little bit of time for me to digest, but over time it sat really well with me and become a song that I would know all the words to very easily and just kind of want to belt out at the top of my lungs at a show, because it has that stage crowd pleasing energy. But it's got a bit of that grit underneath it in the production. There's a lot going on. There's drums, there's a lot of guitars. It's a very, very anthemic track. So Cure for Me, we've already kind of, again, established this is her sort of anti-discriminatory anthem for the LGBT plus community. She is very adamant and vocal about LGBTIA plus issues and allyship. And specifically conversion therapy. She talks about how even in her home country of Norway, conversion therapy is still technically illegal, which is absolutely abhorrent. And I at first thought that this was about the Greek god Panacea, because Panacea is the goddess of healing. And so I thought, well, it's sort of a play on the idea of needing to be healed, because obviously all these people think, oh, gay people, they're in sin, they need to be converted, they need to go through this process to heal themselves. But this is actually how we are meant to be. And the healing process of all of that trauma, being told we're lesser than, is rejecting that and accepting that there is no cure for me because there is nothing wrong with me. As she triumphantly states on this very TikTok-friendly, sort of like I like to describe, kind of like off-kilter carnival ride music, keyboard sort of riff that's going on in the backing. And then what she actually illustrated in this, when she talks about the video, when she talks about all the songs more directly in relationship to the Greek gods, this song is actually a tribute to Hermaphrodite. If you've heard the term hermaphrodite before, you kind of understand this is a god of intersexual sort of man-woman energy, the child of Hermes and Aphrodite, and sort of representing the queer side of the pantheon of gods, and the understanding that male and female and masculine and feminine, are a little bit less binary than we like to understand them. So I do think that's a very, that's a great reference to pull in. You Keep Me Crawling. This is Aurora kind of getting a little bit more feisty and showing her fire here, as she should. I think it's the perfect sort of counterpart or reversal of the energy of Exist for Love. And it's great that they sort of seek into one another, because the energy is so frustrated and pent up on You Keep Me Crawling, sort of describing how toxic the way love and chasing love can become. Why does it make me feel like I am weak and small? Why do I keep begging like the animal? Maybe it's because I need to serve someone. So you keep me crawling on my knees. There's a little bit of a reference here to sort of being kind of just selling yourself for the prospect of love and something in return, but it's entirely in the power of the other individual. And with the up-tempo, manic, wailing chorus that she adds to this song, I think it perfectly illustrates that energy. And so it's a real favorite of mine. for more of the up-tempo stuff on this record to just sort of really nail home that desperation and that sort of moment of self-doubt where you're just like, is this really healthy what I'm doing to myself, that I'm putting so much energy into someone else? And honestly, if I had to pick, if there is a god or goddess of jealousy in the pantheon of Greek gods, I would place this song under that, because I think jealousy, also somewhat lust, so I'm not entirely sure if it would fit in there. Unfortunately, Aurora hasn't said anything about what this song pertains to. In the video where she talks about all the Greek gods and goddesses that inspired the songs, she overlooks this one. I don't know why. So I don't know. If anyone knows anything in the comments, please elucidate me. But this is all I could find. But like I said, it brilliantly transitions into when she sings, "Giving into love should set me free." We go into the, airy and wistful guitar notes of "Exist for Love," which I've already talked about is inspired by Aphrodite, pretty clear there. It's a bit schmaltzy, but Aurora is allowed to go there in one song, It's just so beautiful. A song that has taken a little bit of time to grow on me, but by the time the album was released, this song came out in like early December. And the first few listens, I was like a little unsure of it, but it's grown to be such a huge monumental cornerstone of this record, Heathens. This is inspired by the Greek goddess of the underworld, Persephone, the sort of mother of the lost ones, the deviant souls. It also ties into the sort of idea of Eve eating the apple and being, doused in sin along with Adam. And everything she will touch is evil, but we are all a part of that. She bargains with the world, so everything she wants will come to her. With no greed inside her mind, she knows what she deserves. We fell from sky with grace and landed in her soft and warm embrace. She gave her love, her gift of life, so we could live with her. And that is why we live like heathens, stealing from the trees of Eden, living in the arms of freedom. And everything we touch is evil. Heathens was a term used to describe, pagans back in the day, like once Christianity became a real stronghold in places like Rome. And for example, everyone who was not a Christian or not a Jew was called a heathen. And so it's very important to, turn around the sort of negative stereotype of that word. A lot of times, I believe the heathen term is used for people who follow the Norse mythologies. They call themselves heathens. I'm not entirely sure about that. You can fact check me on that. So there's ties to like the, subverting of what would be considered a negative pejorative term, that you're a heathen. It's like, well, technically, weren't we all? To a certain degree by your logic. I mean, we were all cast from the Garden of Eden, weren't we? So maybe there is love down here after all. Maybe we're not completely forsaken. And that's what this song explores. And the crescendo it has. When I think the song is over and she has this very sort of off-kilter melody line that's sort of cascading in on itself, and we take out all the instrumental, and then the drums come in and we get this very explosive moment, which reminds me a lot of All Is Soft Inside, which is another sort of example of really experimental sort of tribal, unbridled energy coming out through production. Aurora's, wolf-like wailing it's so pivotal and there's a real primordial energy to this track. Sells it wonderfully. And at the core of this idea is the fact that what a lot of men have demonized women for kind of ties into the allegory of Persephone. A lot of people who are viewed as different or less than, this is an ode to them sort of being taken in by the goddess of those who are sort of rejected by society, the untouchables, so to speak. It's not exactly the fact that they're the evil ones, like they're just cast aside by society for whatever reason. And so it's flipping that on its head, which I think is an important spirit to this song. So definitely the most playful song on this record, the most cheeky, a little bit avant-garde and a bit left turn for Aurora, but I think it suits her sort of whimsicality, is The Innocent. This piano-led, almost jazzy pop number. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's got a very infectious, stand up and dance on a table energy. I mean, to be real with you, it's alluding to the god Eros, who was the god of sexual pleasure and desire. and partying and all of the, things in between. And so Aurora is reveling in that, which good for her. Exhale, inhale. I have a lot to say about this song. I feel like we usually are used to hearing inhale, exhale. That's just normally how the pattern goes. But it's very distinct, as Aurora says in interviews, that she wanted it titled this way. Immediately, I think of meditation. I think of calming yourself, your racing thoughts. At the very beginning, she has this very, is just like floating humming notes that aren't really finding a place in a melody quite yet. And the melody does take a little bit of time to build. If I had to, pick apart a song sonically, I'd say this is the least accessible song on the record, or one of the least accessible melodically. But that's not to say that it doesn't have brilliant moments, and I appreciate it, all of it, as I've listened to it more repeatedly. I was a moving thing before I was a human being. I was the ice before it melts. I was the tree before it fell. My dear, come near. Do you understand what is happening? Crawl beneath the earth. I feel the hunger and the thirst. If you could fly and be the bird, then you could see the forest burn. Who is listening to the sirens singing? Who's calling me for the emergency? In the outro, she repeats, take from our world no more, in a very heavenly, elegiac fashion. And so this record becomes so elegant and lofty from something so kind of disjointed. And I find that just so brilliant. And although there are some melody lines that remind me of Everything Matters, there's a small similarity there. I mean, she can copy herself. I don't really mind. And ultimately, I think she explains this record is about the god of god Thanatos, I believe is his name, the god of death. And so this song could be a lot about death and rebirth. So it's a dark subtext, and there is a tragic element to this song. The melancholy comes through. Someone's pointing out in the comments here that inhale sounds like in hell. So she's kind of alliterating that a little bit. A reminder to call for help, which I think is something she is talking about in describing this song in relation to the god of death. So that, you don't wait until you become succumbed by darkness to ask for a helping hand. This could also, I think, be sort of a metaphor for the earth the earth sort of crying out, to be saved by us, whoever might listen, to sort of be like, I'm here for you. I taste the pollution in the air. I feel your hand. I feel your embrace. But ultimately, I think this is definitely a call to stillness, a call to centering your racing thoughts, a call to sort of working through your darkest demons. And it's the song that has, I think, the most open-ended exploration thematically coming from it. So a lot of conceptual weight hinging upon it. And I absolutely, I think it is one of Aurora's more timeless tracks for that reason. So, interestingly, Aurora talks about a temporary high being inspired by the Janus or Janus. However, Janus is known more as a Roman god. He is the god of beginnings, transitions, the god of time, passageways, endings, doorways. And so regardless, it doesn't matter if it's Greek or Roman. A lot of them borrowed from each other. The Romans borrowed a lot from the Greek when it comes to their gods. Some of them are exactly the same name. And so the point still stands. This song is about celebrating the moment. This is definitely a sweat it out on the dance floor number for her. It reminds me a lot of Animal, which was a similar kind of, ferocious, fiery spirit dance song, four on the floor, a little bit more on that, kind of unapologetic pop moment that Aurora can revel in and sounds so well produced on. I think that the song is screaming to be a big single. A Dangerous Thing is a song about the god Pytho. Pytho is the god of seduction and persuasion, manipulation to a certain extent. And you can hear that in the songs. She's singing about something about you is soft like an angel, something inside you is violence and danger. Something is warm and seductive about you, but there's something very also cold and abusive. I think many of us can relate to that. There's these two sides of you, and I never know which one I'm going to get. But it's really hard for me to to completely sever myself from you, because just when I think you're toxic, I remember the sides of you that maybe aren't really true, but are at least presenting themselves to me as warm and inviting and loving. And so I'm having a hard time reconciling, like, who is it safe for me to be with you? Like, is it really safe? And doubting that. There's no end to the fall. You keep on getting better. I keep forgetting. So admitting that you're a part of this, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, that kind of attitude. She's admitting that in the end. And I love the wistful guitar, the country tinged kind of sound in the melody. It's something I don't know, it's a folkier sound that Aurora doesn't explore so much on this record, but it would have fit right at home on her first record. And it's kind of got this cold winter night energy to me, which I don't know, listening to the cold winter January nights while I'm driving, just like really feel it. Like, I just want to howl out at the moon. Like, there's no end to the fall, no love in the end. But I know this is not love. In the bridge, there's that sort of elevated consciousness coming through. I'm losing myself in this, in all the craziness that you're embroiling me in. Artemis. Now, I knew Artemis was a Greek god, but I didn't know Artemis was a female Greek god. I don't know if the author of Artemis Fowl was aware of the fact that Artemis was originally a female name. I always associate Artemis with Artemis Fowl, and that's a male. So I was kind of blown away when I was like, oh, it's the goddess of the moon. I didn't know what it was the god of. I knew Diana was the Roman god of the moon. Goddess of the moon. So I was like, oh, Artemis is the girl. Okay, that changes things. Because as I first listened to the song, I was kind of, what will you do when she drinks the sea? Draw her in sorrow or let her be free? When she's upset, all of her heart is cold. What will you do when she eats the moon? The mother made us a savage daughter who never begs for forgiveness. I always wondered why they all came back for more. Aurora talks about Artemis being personified as a real human woman on the earth at one point. And she was all encompassing. She was almighty and powerful in a way that really terrified people. And she had an insatiable hunger. And there is a slinky and seductive and sexual undertone to the song. We've got an accordion coming in here, giving it a folky European feel. And I think that Aurora kind of sounds a little bit like she's a bard in a, tavern in some medieval village when she's kind of in that spirit. And I love that about it. Sort of just riffing on, a very sort of seductive and on the prowl kind of female figure who is always on the hunt. So you better be wary. And Blood in the Wine sounds straight out of the Witcher series video game. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Blood and Wine expansion pack to the Witcher 3 game. But obviously the title is very similar. But if you also listen to the howling chorus, it sounds very much like this battle cry that would come right off of the Witcher 3 soundtrack. So I don't know if Aurora was slightly influenced by that. But this is another song that's grown on me. Her deeper tone in her voice kind of reminds me of like a Joan Jett or something. Like, she sounds like a rocker, which I think is something, again, very interesting. We're usually used to her higher tone coming through and overpowering her vocal, but she really lays into that lower register here. So there's a real ominous presence to this song. And this is, of course, with the reference of wine, an allusion to, she says Bacchus. Bacchus is the Roman god of wine. Dionysus is the Greek one. So I don't know, they're the same. But the god of wine is kind of similar to Eros, the god of pleasure. They kind of have a lot of fun together. Celebrating that, in comparing blood and wine, two things that have very strong connotations, the idea of blood being turned into wine from Jesus, and she's playing with all these religious sort of imagery and symbolism to also sort of poke fun at it in a way, but also illustrate that I was given a heart before I was given a mind. We all fell from grace, and life gave us a sweeter taste. she gets really sort of pointing and biting in the second verse when she says, I was given a name before I was given blood, like you were given your faith before there was made a God. Which, is an interesting way of flipping it and saying, like, I'm sorry, but your God was invented. Young rivers in your hands and grass burning in promised lands. You can drink, you can feast. There's beauty in your beast. Basically, subverting the sort of virginal purification trope of, these sort of life without sin kind of rules and standards that you're meant to follow. Maybe poking fun at abstinence culture a little bit with drinking, which I'm not a big drinker, but hey, I mean, live and let live, whatever. I know Aurora's into wine. So, it's a bit of that, like, there's beauty in what you consider darkness, and you just don't want to look at it. You've decided that you're holier than us for some reason. Well, guess what? Suck it. And that's what this entire song is. Because it is. It's a little bit of a middle finger to established religion. Again, it's it's the relationship between the heathens and the devout, Orthodox Christians and Abrahamic faiths. It's a very kind of interesting parallel that kind of is in the thread of a lot of her songs here. So this could be a dream, probably the most obviously talking about Morpheus, who is the god of dreams. There's something kind of Taylor Swift about the melody on this song. I don't know why Taylor Swift comes to mind. Again, it's a little folkier. It's a little country, but not country. It's like that kind of country pop alternative blend. But there's something about the melody and maybe a little bit of the lyrical content as well that just sort of gives me Taylor Swift vibes. Again, I'm not saying that it's reductive in that way or anything because of it. I'm just kind of trying to give a little interesting insight into what I was thinking as I was listening to these songs. Alluding to, how dreams can really transport us somewhere else, which is something that the final track is called A Little Place Called the Moon. This is the most esoteric on the record, and it was the one I was the most excited to listen to. It's very experimental, not a lot of vocals. I was actually I don't want to say I was disappointed when she did come in with actual lyrics, but in some ways it was almost more powerful when it was just this, resonant ooh and ah tone, because I think there's something very Enya about it. We don't need to go into English, if we're thinking something very pagan and primordial, we don't necessarily need to soil it with English at the end. But she sings, I can see it in my mind, I can see them get in line, like a dream about to bloom, we are going to the moon. And so using the moon as sort of this metaphor for sort of like dreams, the night, feminine exploration, beauty, all of these sort of metaphors that I think traditionally a lot of people have associated with the moon. And it's a wonderful way to sort of, once again, take us on that mothership. If you want to look at the past record of hers with the ending where it got a little bit, distorted and a little bit eerie and just strange and weird in the perfect way. And everything about this song is doing that. I didn't want it to end. As I was listening, I was like, please don't let this song end. And I was happy it went on longer than I expected it to, considering how short The Forbidden Fruit of Aden was. I was like, oh God, please let this be longer, because we need like a real outro here. And it's long enough to satisfy me, but boy, it just gets me hungry for more of that, like I said, experimental sort of choir mixed with vocal soundscape ambient stuff that she could really run away with and just make absolutely out of this world stuff with. There is something so ritualistic about this song. It's got a very elegant pagan feel. And I'm not entirely sure what Greek or goddess or god it's alluring to. Again, she hasn't mentioned. We've already had the moon referenced with Artemis, so not entirely sure. This one maybe doesn't have a specific god or goddess attached to it. I'm not sure. Again, if you know in the comments something I don't, please let me know. I'd be very interested to know. But I'm not entirely sure which one she was going for. But hey, it's interesting how this became sort of a little bit of a puzzle here. But it's a really cool theme to build an album around. And overall, I'm very impressed. I knew I was going to be impressed. I just don't think Aurora can let me down. For her to let me down, she would have to sell out completely. And I just don't see that. I mean, you could argue some people might listen to Cure for Me and be like, this is not the girl who made Runaway. Like, you know, this is a little too commercial. I don't know, it's a 15-song album. We got one song that sounds like that. Even the more up-tempo songs like A Temporary High, which again is also sort of, I think, the biggest radio single on the record, along with Giving Into the Love. Those songs are a little bit more in that vein, but Cure for Me is the only one that I think really departs from. And she mentioned that this song was written in an entirely different sort of year from the rest of this record. This was actually a song she wrote earlier in Australia in 2019 before she'd actually even begun writing for this record. So you can sort of understand how it was like a completely different set of producers and people she was working with. And she just decided, let's put it on this project. And I don't mind its inclusion. But there's all of the little flavors of Aurora that I'm looking for on this project. And, you know, with her last two albums being two separate albums, but also one, they felt a little disjointed, but also similar. I like just getting one full project from her. It's like we just get one 15-song album, because the way that that last project was divided in half, it was kind of like, okay, I see what she was doing, but it would have been, you know, I mean, you can easily combine it and make one giant record. And I would have changed the track list if I did that. But anyway, I'm very much a fan of what she brought to the table here. I think that Aurora is only going to continue to excel in her craft. There's no song on here is not something I don't want to listen to again. Like, it's just every song deserves to be added to my playlist. It's that kind of record for me. Maybe I'm a stan. Maybe I'm a little bit, you know, biased in that regard. But I hope that, you know, if you're a new Aurora fan, I think you'll get into this record, because that's what's great about it, is she's, you know, I don't know, she's staying accessible as much as she's being very experimental. There's a really great balance there that I like that she's constantly kind of keeping in check. So I don't know. I think that new fans could easily fall in love with her through this record, and still satisfy longtime fans. So very excited to see where she heads from here. And we need more artists like Aurora. We really do. We really do. And then I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. My favorite song is probably Exhale, Inhale is probably my favorite song at the moment. Which wasn't at the beginning when I first listened. And then I love Giving Into the Love. I don't know what it is, but I've just been listening to that song so much lately. It's got really high replay value for me. I love Heathens. I love A Little Place Called the Moon. I love A Dangerous Thing. Those are the top ones. I mean, the only song that I don't really get that much from is Artemis. Personally, I think Artemis sonically is a little like filler, but you know, it's still a great melody. It's got an interesting, you know, set of instruments involved with the accordion. So it's a different sort of style for her, and I don't mind it. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. I will see you all in my next review. I plan to do a Aurora ranking video at some point now that we have this album out in the next couple months, where I will tier rank all of Aurora's music up to date. So that'll be a fun little video to make. And I hope you all enjoyed this, and like and subscribe if you are new here. And I will see you all in my next review. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.